Good morning.
Good morning, coffee moaners, or welcome. How are you? Oh, look, that's nice, isn't it?
Hyper-situated big milk carton.
Yeah.
You don't get that on the Today programme,
Mark,
do you?
Look, what's that doing right in the middle of the show? But that's all the milk we've got, so be careful with it.
Preserve it.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, everyone.
Hope you had a good weekend. I can't remember the weekend.
It was very busy. It was very blurry.
Well, there's a change.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun weekend. Thank you for all of your comments. Obviously, we are dedicating Coffee Moaning today to a single subject, and it was a subject that came up in the Saturday papers every Saturday. For anyone who doesn't know, we run through the papers, and this story I found in I think 3 of the broadsheets. None of the, I'm not too sure, we might be corrected on this, but I didn't see it picked up in any of the tabloids, but the story was picked up. And I'm going to pop up the headlines that I saw over the weekend. And it made for some pretty arresting reading, really, didn't it? This headline here from the Times: rape culture exists at 1,600 primary schools, report finds. Testimony from children reveals they've faced sexual harassment, groping, inappropriate touching, and forced penetration.
So obviously with this, we are giving a trigger warning because the whole show today, we are going to dedicate to this unbelievably important subject.
Absolutely.
Some of you might remember, because you're such keen watchers, that was it 2021 that... Anyway, a good few years ago, I met Summer Sarah, who is the CEO of Everyone's Invited. I was so enormously impressed by what this young woman had done. She had her own experience of sexual harassment, and through talking to many others, she realised that this wasn't just like 1 or 2 people. This was right across the board. She set up this charity and this website where people could anonymously, or name themselves, I believe, talk about their experiences at school. Well, it was phenomenal, the response. And what was extraordinary about that was just the sheer volume and the stories did actually shift Ofsted.
Yes.
So when people pull together, right, and really mean something, we can affect change. So that's where I want to start with this, because there's so much that's going on in the world that we just want to go,
yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, it's too horrible. I can't bear it. You know, everyone is still fuzzing around adolescence, that incredible drama. We have brilliant chats with you here. And this is something that we need to deal with because it's the grassroots. Over 1,600 schools have been named in Everyone's Invited report that they published just on Saturday, where some kind of sexual abuse has been experienced by children in it. These are children from 5 to 11.
I just want, and before we bring Summer into the chat, and we're going to talk through the report, and we're going to talk through the implications and how we can shift the dial. Exactly. I mean, the thing I did want to say, and I felt when I was going through the papers at the weekend, is there is such a taboo aspect about this topic. I think it's a really uncomfortable truth, and a really discomforting sort of reality to even think about, especially the word primary school. Because if I'm honest, that's what drew me to the story right in. And I was just like, what intersects in a primary school is so many tough things to negotiate, which is notions of innocence, who's responsible if a child of that age is badly behaved or does something wrong. Where does it come from? Where does that point of innocence and choice and agency creep in? And as a parent to daughters, you're just left thinking, oh my God, what have we allowed to pass? Which, as you rightly said earlier, we just let just disappear.
And for those parents of sons that I think are victims of this rape culture world we live in, just as my friends with sons worry just as much as we do with daughters. And rather than just worrying and saying it's beyond us all, we need to have conversations, ongoing conversations with ourselves and incredible people like Summer Sarah.
Shall we invite Summer in?
Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat.
Welcome.
Hi, so lovely to see you again.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's really incredible to be speaking with you, and we're so grateful that you're platforming and centering on this issue.
Oh.
Well, it's a damn honor, because what we love more than anything is people that believe that by standing up and saying something can make a damn difference.
Absolutely.
That's how we roll around here. So let's just go through things bit by bit. First of all, these testimonies that you have from these children across, at the moment, 1,664 schools, primary schools, I think. How does that happen? Because I think a lot of people will go, well, but I mean, how? And like the children, and
I was literally interested in the
Yeah.
technicalities of how you get that information and reach
people
out
will
to
be
them.
thinking that whilst we're talking to you.
Yeah.
So let's get that one out of the way.
Yeah, so it's a combination of teenagers or young adults looking back at their experiences in primary school, and kind of uploading and sharing what happened to them. And it's also, we've had evidence of some cases of adults or parents or therapists going on with their kids and writing stories with them. And now, since we've kind of launched the campaign 2 days ago, we've had a huge influx, hundreds and hundreds of stories pouring in. And it's people of all ages sharing what happened to them in primary school, these experiences, very, very incredibly harrowing stories of misogyny and harassment and assault and violence. And, you know, it's completely devastating to kind of comprehend that this is happening and that it's children abusing children. And I think that's a really important point to point out, that, you know, in the past, there's a kind of, you know, there's kind of been this idea that violence against children is perpetrated solely by adults. But you know, now we're seeing evidence, you know, there's been a stark increase over the past 3 years of cases where the perpetrators of sexual violence in primary school are being perpetrated by other children, which is just kind of an unbelievable reality to get our heads around.
And on that, I think, you know, as I was saying earlier, we want to believe that it's unbelievable, because we don't want to look at it because it scares the holy molies out of us. And rape culture, and I think you and your charity have done a lot to help people understand what that means. But I suppose people have more difficulty understanding what that means within such young ages, like within primary schools. Is it the same thing? Is it pornography, secrecy, all the other things that we think?
Yeah, so when we use the term rape culture, it's when attitudes and beliefs in society have the effect of normalizing and trivializing sexual violence. And this includes experiences of misogyny, of sexist language, of name calling, of groping and grabbing and touching, and forced penetration, and experiences of image-based abuse, online abuse. And all of what I've just mentioned is present within the testimonies from primary school. And yeah, so it's staggering.
I read many of them on your website, and we're not going to read any of those out here, guys. But if you want to go to Everyone's Invited, support them, because they're doing great work. And
the link is beneath this live, but also the Instagram.
Yeah, and have a read of some of those testimonies, because it's interesting. Mark, we were just talking. We put up a poll earlier, and you know, it's 52% of people 56% of people feel like they had experienced something at primary school. And we were just talking before we started, weren't we, Summer, about. And I wonder how many people that say they did and didn't even know, because of the acceptable behavior that we sometimes talk about with boys, you know.
Sorry. And on just as a follow-up, I was going to ask, have you found, just in the publication since Saturday, a surge in new schools and testimonies?
Absolutely. We've had, you know, the momentum has been building, and we've had hundreds of people writing into us, and submission, you know, as we speak, it's growing. And, you know, from all over the country. And yeah, it's in some ways, it's really moving, and it's incredible that so many people are having the courage and the strength to share openly, many for the first time, because it is incredibly stigmatizing and harrowing and shameful for a lot of people. But it's also like really devastating to see the volume and to see this pick up. But we're not surprised. Like we you know, since the initial kind of explosion of Everyone's Invited 3 years ago, there were testimonies being submitted from primary at that time. And
Okay.
yeah, so, you know, this has been happening. And I think it's a really excellent point that you made, that for a lot of people, you know, it's so normalized, some of this behavior, that they don't even recognize it as abusive or wrong, you know, and the trauma does stay with them and it comes up in other ways. But it's really shocking. And I think as parents, I mean, I'm not a parent, but, you know, what we're saying, you know, it's so important that parents, you know, take the responsibility now to understand, do everything they can to understand the lives of their children. You know, they have to be.
What can they do? What is the advice on that?
We say, you know, it's no longer an option to not speak to your children about porn, to not speak to them about nudes, to not speak to them about sex. You know, it is imperative that we are, you know, going online, understanding the digital world, becoming digitally literate, and, you know, download the apps, get TikTok, get Snapchat, get Instagram. It's so critical that parents have an understanding of what their children are being exposed to on a daily basis. And, you know, I said this on the radio yesterday, and I think this is a really powerful kind of way to frame it easily. It's basically like, you know, if your kid is spending 3 to 4 hours a day scrolling on TikTok, that would be the same as sending your child on a 3 to 4 hour journey and not being aware of where they're going, who they're talking to, what they're being exposed to, what they're seeing. Like, that is exactly, you know, and we have children. Look around, every restaurant, every cafe, you know, everyone is just scrolling on tablets, on phones, on iPods. Like, you know, this is the age that we live in. We live in a digital age, and, you know, the older generation has to do this catching up. The gap has never been wider, and that is incredibly powerfully portrayed in adolescence. And it's what we've been saying for the past 3 years. You know, we have to be aware of this. We have to get on top of this.
Do you find from your side that there's a sort of accelerating of cases, and is the problem sort of speeding up almost exponentially? Because there's, you know, maybe 2 to 3 years ago, is there a feeling, we always like to think that everything's getting better and everything's kind of improving, and awareness, we have mental health awareness and everyone's awareness. Sometimes what comes with awareness, unfortunately, in the wrong hands, is a knowledge of the language to turn it back round and kind of perpetrate the same kind of crimes or behavior. Have you found in your reports and in the statistics that you get, is there an accelerating in terms of it getting younger and it increasing across time?
Yes. And, you know, we've seen that from the testimonies, the evidence that we collect. You know, we have the rise, you know, of hardcore pornography that is completely, you know, accessible to anyone everywhere. And then we have this extremist misogynist content online as well. And, you know, the statistics show us as well. We've got the National Police Chiefs Council report, which asserts that there's been a 400% increase in child-on-child sexual abuse and exploitation from 2013 to 2024. And that 52% of alleged offenders in cases of sexual violence in primary schools are children themselves, compared to 33% just a decade ago. So you can see, just, you know, the evidence is there. We see in our testimonies, you know, we were speaking to a parent of a survivor. You know, her child was sexually assaulted in primary school by 2 boys. And it became clear very quickly that those 2 boys had been accessing one of their dad's iPhones and been watching pornography, hardcore violent pornography. So, you know,
sorry, Summer, carry on.
I was just saying that, you know, children as young as 9 are accessing violent porn, and we know this. And, you know, that is why it is imperative. And what we're calling for is an aging down of prevention education. We need to be, you know, helping and supporting young people in primary schools, and it needs to be education that is contextually relevant to their lived experiences. You know, it's all well and good to talk about online safety, but if you don't acknowledge that children are being exposed to violent porn at 9, like, what's the point? It needs to be, and I think
it's very important what you've said, you know, because I've read a lot of what you've talked about and listened to me, and when you say, because I think this is so true what you say, Summer, which is we have this idea of holding onto our child's innocence, and sadly, whilst we are in this dream world of holding onto our child's innocence, their innocence is being lost somewhere else by someone saying something either through technology, as you say, or in person. So you have to knuckle down and have those conversations, however uncomfortable they are. And we have always been fully into that, haven't we? That we have really difficult conversations early on, because we don't want our daughters asking somebody else about hardcore porn.
But I think the way you say that, we can now no longer avoid it. I mean, we can no longer afford to be coy. We can no longer. I think one of the other things I've noticed also, when our kids were partly homeschooled as well, there's always an exceptionalism that creeps into most parents. Every parent somewhere says, well, yes, but you know, and we all kind of, and I think we all have to, your responsibility as a parent, for me, what makes a good parent, I'm not saying I achieve this, is forever questioning whether you're a good parent, because what can you do better, and how can you improve, and how can you change? Because so many parents will just close down the conversation. My child doesn't do this. And we also get quite often on this topic, and I understand this, and I have huge compassion for parents of boys, a sense that parents of boys feel almost targeted, like they're somehow almost guilty by default because they've got boys.
But and that's why I wanted to say, when you were just talking about that case with those that girl and those two boys had watched hard porn on their dad's phone, we always like to make a point. This isn't about attacking boys, because I truly believe boys are victims in the same way. It manifests itself. I remember a family member, I can't say who it is, who went on a sleepover, and this porn was shown. And I remember him saying to me, I feel like something's spoiled in me forever.
Wow.
And he hadn't had a sexual relationship. He hadn't, and I just did not know what to do. It was a long time, but I didn't know how to cope with that. Wow. But when I hear of a boy abusing a girl, my first thought is, what's he seen? What's he been subjected to? Because he's a boy who wants his innocence as well. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely on the same page. We're talking about children. It's children abusing children, and everyone is a victim here, and we're all accountable equally. And it's not about blaming boys, blaming parents, everyone in society, all of us have a responsibility for this. We all need to work together to solve this. And, you know, we have, you know, a huge number of cases of male victims, of young boys being abused and assaulted equally. And as you say, like a young person being exposed to that is incredibly traumatizing, you know, and it's incredibly difficult for everyone.
I mean, if you think about it, if you like, whenever I've seen porn, 9 times out of 10, it's incredibly violent. That's what I think. I think that feels violent as an adult. And if you think, if you're out and about and you see violence in the street, and you've got a child will like be petrified and run away, that's what they're getting, boys and girls, when they are seeing this pornography. But that's the thing that I feel so powerless over as a parent. I don't know what to do about that. I mean, I do say, we have always said to our girls, what you see in pornography is not real. You know, often these girls are drugged, or they do all sorts of things so that these girls can go through what they're going through. And you are going to meet a lot of boys that have learned about sex through that. So it's going to be your responsibility to say to them, just to let you know, this doesn't happen in real life. This doesn't. And we started that conversation quite early. Like, oh my God, Mum. I said, no, you've got to, because these boys often are completely unaware.
I mean, and I think the problem for boys as well, and I've come across boys only through my daughters and their friendship circles and things like that, and obviously sons of friends, they confuse, you know, the pornography they see. What's confusing about it for them, and this is where what you're saying in terms of normalizing rape culture, that's precisely what it is rape culture becomes threaded into intimacy. This is what intimacy is. And that's where, you know, where is the dividing line between a culprit, and a number of people I can see are asking, you know, where does the culpability sit with the child even? We also do have we do have the generations coming through, and it's often said, isn't it, each generation coming through seems even more streetwise than the one before it. Things do seem to be pivoting younger. I have kids ranging from 30 down to 16, 17. And I can see a sort of breadth of experience in the younger children, way beyond the experiences of the older children, so that the older children even look down across 5 years and go, I don't know how I'd cope with the bombardment of kind of content and what have you. And we also come across boys who are going through, even, it's an interesting one as well for boys, because I see some boys that are struggling themselves because they too feel lost in this quagmire. They know it's all wrong, but they don't know how to gain their own sort of positioning in it. So I think what you're doing is, I mean, so what can be done? I mean, do you guys, as I understand it, you go into schools, you're helping to kind of change opinions?
Yeah, this is how it all started, the primary campaign, because over the past 3 years, we've been educating young people in 50,000 young people in secondary schools. And the levels of misogyny and harassment and violence that we saw was staggering, to the point where we said, this is not prevention. We're too late. This is intervention. We need to go earlier. But, when we're so passionate about giving young people a non-judgmental, empathetic, open space to discuss these issues, to, get it all out, to really kind of learn to critically evaluate these things and learn about, digital literacy. So they actually, when they're seeing online extremist content, they can look at it and say, break it down, like question it, critically evaluate it. Don't just kind of absorb it and believe it. And it's the same with pornography. As you said, as you mentioned, it's incredible that you were saying this is not real, because that is exactly the messages that young people need to be receiving. Like, it's not real life. It's not, it is not a loving, equal, and like intimate portrayal of a sexual relationship. It is incredibly degraded. And as you say, the vast majority of porn that people actually watch is degrading, misogynistic, objectifying, dehumanizing, and it's violent, and it's sanctioning and encouraging violence. And there is nothing more like powerful than on young people's understanding, conception of what sex is and what it looks like than pornography. And it is, again, as you mentioned, it is completely defining and reshaping like how young people have sex and their understanding of sex and the sexual scripts, like, what moves they perform, the distributions of power, the words and the language that is used, like it's changing it. And it is so important that we have those conversations with young people. And that's what we do when we go into schools every day. And it's what parents should be doing as well. We all have a responsibility. It's not just down to the schools and the specialist organizations. It's everyone getting involved and carrying through this education. It's so important.
How have the schools reacted to you? Are any of them pissed off, or are they engaged and saying? And the reactions from parents and schools, I think, were really interesting.
I think across the board, overall, schools are engaged and they try. It's really challenging for them, and they are. Many schools that we work with are overworked and understaffed, and they lack resources, and they're really exhausted. As you see in adolescence, you can see what the environment is like, and just I mean that's it. It's really hard. We really, like, teachers come to us all the time, and they have huge challenges, huge struggles. They're really, and they're also victims of violence and harassment in those environments. It can be really terrifying for them. And we've obviously had a mixture. We've had, when things 3 years ago, when the initial schools list blew up, there was like a lack of understanding, confusion, and maybe anger in some cases. But I think, over time, people then understood. It took time, but now they understand that, what we're trying to do is shine a light and expose an issue so that we can all challenge it and tackle it together. It's definitely hard for some people to get their head around, but, at this point, it's kind of like, we've got to wake up. As you said earlier, just before this call, you said we've got to look into the light. We've got to be realistic. Education protects; it does not corrupt. We need to be realistic into what this world is that we're living in. We need to be proactive and not reactive, because we're too late and we can't afford to do this anymore.
It's quite a blunt instrument, but I know in Australia they're toying with the idea of banning handsets to under 16-year-olds. Do you think there's any sort of quite almost kind of, as I say, blunt, quite brutal, but seismic decisions that be made like that won't, I get you, it's not gonna remove the sentiment, the culture. It has to be every child, exactly. And there was one piece I read in which the report was discussed, one class with one phone in it, that class is essentially kind of, infiltrated.
Yeah.
But do you think anything like that could help? To what extent is social media really the problem, or part of the problem?
I mean, it's a huge part of the problem, but our kind of position at Everyone's Invited is education being the most powerful remedy for this, because, I guess we just think about it. It just doesn't feel realistic to us. We live in a digital world. For my generation and below, we didn't have a time where there wasn't phones. No. So it's hard for us I think it's easier for older generations to imagine that, but that's just not the reality that we're in anymore. And I just don't think, as we say, a lot of people find it hard to picture, children doing this in primary schools. But it is, the phones. It is, if one child is being exposed, then it's kind of like the whole group is exposed. Do you know what I mean? So it just doesn't feel realistic to us that that's going to happen. That there's a great retreat from technology and no one's going to use phones.
I agree, and I sometimes think that those debates in the press is the press's way of dealing, the media's way of dealing with it. That if you don't sign up to this solution, then you don't want a solution. And you're right, it's actually much muckier, much more complicated. We also have to get off our hobby horse about little Johnny. I'm sorry to anyone who's got a Johnny, but little Johnny is so well behaved, and actually, there's always a compelling reason as to why he might have done this that day. I think we just got to get real about our children.
but also with girls, and you speak very well on this, Summer. It's also about girls' culpability in the slut shaming, I mean, I hear some stories about how girls treat other girls around this subject, and I want to weep. So it's about educating girls on their toxic masculinity as well. It's so important, and their acceptance of toxic masculinity. I mean, again, I think in adolescence they showed this showed it all just so brilliantly, didn't they? And is that something that you talk about when you go into the schools as well?
Yeah, and we have a session on internalized misogyny, and we're in girls' schools, and we also do sessions where we split up the boys and the girls, and then we bring them together at the end. And something that we focus on when we're just working with girls is this internalized misogyny, because we are living in, this patriarchal culture where sexism is deeply embedded. It's so ingrained in all of us, and and it's sometimes unconsciously present, and we don't even realize that we're doing it or saying things that are harmful, or maybe victim blaming a survivor when they come forward. We don't believe them, we question them, it's almost like a reflex, and that is present not just in men and boys, it's present in women and girls too. And
I think that's a very important subject that isn't spoken about enough. We talk to the girls about this, like, the whole bad boy lover. Or when, it's somebody, he's lovely, but he's too nice. And we will say, that is toxic masculinity. That is it right there.
Yes.
You don't know it. It's gone in by osmosis that a real man is a tough man. He's a bit of a boss. He'll leave you feeling a bit shit, and thankfully you've chosen very kindly. But challenging your daughters in how they think and how they speak to other women, I think is really part of it.
I remember going into a school and watching a session with one of my incredible facilitators, and it was a session with just girls. And one of I think they must have been 13, 14. And one of the girls said she didn't believe in feminism, and she was adamant. She said, I don't believe in feminism. It's gone too far. I'm not on board. But, it became very clear, like throughout the session, she was one of the most passionate in kind of speaking out about what she was experiencing, having been stalked, having been shouting at how it was so unfair, how she was one of the most vocal in kind of challenging the misogyny that she was clearly experiencing, but didn't quite have the kind of understanding or language to articulate that at the beginning of the session. And so there's a lack of understanding there, and a kind of, and our work is about helping them connect the dots and helping them realize.
I'd love to come and listen to one of these sessions.
You should. It would be amazing.
I would love that. Please let me go. I would love to sit in a group of girls and hear about that and hear how you help them understand their own, the damage that they are also causing themselves and others without knowing it.
And I think all kids, all parents, I think everyone needs to hear and see more men talking critically about men. Because I think it's that weird thing of sometimes you can access a male sort of sensibility or group by sheer dint of being a man, and more men need to be brave. More dads need to be brave. They need to speak up. I mean, I talk to our girls a lot. Nadia does a lot of the kind of relationship talk, but a lot of stuff when it kicks up around boyfriends, it's really important to come in with a non-judgmental perspective on being boys and what is not permitted behavior, what is not right. And yes, we can understand it. There's understanding, and then there's sanctioning it, and the division of the two.
I always say to the girls, did your dad ever talk to you? Would your dad have ever spoke to you like that? Would your dad have ever, why would you come down a few notches?
But then there are so many people out there for whom their dads will talk to them horribly. I'm never ceased to be amazed by how appalling these.
That's why this work that they are doing is just so important.
You fired up so many interesting comments, Summer, in the chat room, so to speak. Here, I just want to share a few with you, if you don't mind. Just really interesting. Laura Lou, I personally think it can just take one boy who knows too much, and that can rub off on the innocent ones. Kids soak up all information, even the wrong kind. Erin Bullimore says, I was playing online with my younger cousins, had to really tell off some of their friends for threatening rape. Sexual violence seems to be a very casual topic in school these days.
Again, brilliantly shown in adolescence. Brilliantly shown, wasn't it?
And it's like one of those words that, how we've talked a lot about the weaponization of the word gay. It's one of those words that seems to be increasingly thrown around as a kind of almost a deal breaker.
Rapey eyes.
Yeah, rape. Yeah.
Oh, like girls will say, oh yeah, he's rapey. I was like, the first time I heard that, what? Well, he's just got rapey vibes. No, that you can't just throw that word around like that.
But that's how normalized this culture is.
Exactly.
It's how embedded and like that's their level of normal. Like
Dean Ridgewell says, my grandson in reception was buddied up with an older boy who helped him when he needed the toilet. Unfortunately, the older boy abused him. Luckily, my grandson did tell his parents.
And what's gone on with that boy to do that? The boy who did it.
Yeah. Carol Lewis, it's not schools that are the problem. We deal constantly with problems from the night before where children have been online at home. They sleep with phones under the pillow.
Well, I think, Carol, that's what we're saying, isn't it? This cannot be put to one place. And even lovely Summer there, when she said, I'm not a parent, but look what she's doing for the village. It's like, what can you do for the village? Whether you have a child, whether you don't have a child, we can all be powerful in this, and voices that pull together and say, like, you see something horrible and there's a lot of you on the bus and there's something going on and a girl's being spent, all of you stand up, all of you say something. Enough is enough.
And so if I could just say, I mean, I'm sure this live across the day will be seen by thousands of people. If anyone has a history, a story, or they feel they need to contact, what's their best route to notify you, I suppose? Are you still taking in?
Yeah, absolutely. You can log onto our website, everyone'sinvited.uk, and a pop-up will appear and you can enter our primary hub and you can just select share your story, and a submission form will pop up and you can write down your experience and you can submit your school if you'd like, and then you upload it, and then our testimony processors, who are incredible, and they're volunteers and they've been working around the clock processing the testimonies, and then it will be uploaded and it'll go up onto the website and you can see your experience uploaded alongside thousands of other experiences. And many survivors share with us that the act of sharing their story gives them a sense of catharsis, it gives them a sense of relief, and opens up an opportunity for healing, for processing, and for understanding that they're not alone in their experience. Sadly, it's prevalent and it's happening every day. So we just wanted to say that you're so incredibly brave, and it is a huge privilege to be platforming your stories. And you know, your voices matter and are what is driving this change at present. And we couldn't do it without, it's as you mentioned, it's a collective responsibility, and it's these collective voices that are making a difference. We're so moved by the support that we're receiving, and also by the outpouring of stories and experiences and testimonies. And we just want to send love and solidarity, compassion to every single person out there who's been through something like this.
Well, thank you for doing this.
And we echo that when people share on here. It is a privilege when people do. And just under my post I put up yesterday on my feed, you know, this one woman, I can't stop thinking about who'd been touched over and over again at school, and headmaster told her to be quiet and about it, and she never told anyone. She this was under my Instagram, but she said, I'm 31. I think about it every day, every day. And I really do believe that sharing in a safe place does lift some of the burden of it. Does, yeah. You know, the old adage of a problem shared is a problem halved. Well, it might not be halved, but it can. And you are playing a part in us just pulling together and saying, it's actually not fucking okay. Yeah. What's going on?
Can I just ask just before we start, I just want to ask a curious question. Do you have any, you might not have any statistics or knowledge outside of, but is the problem particularly prevalent in the UK? Is it worse here? Do you have any sense of how it compares to other countries?
It happens everywhere. We have testimonies from all over the world.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, we have testimonies from countries all over Europe, Australia, you know, it's in Asia, it's a problem. Yeah. Unfortunately, rape culture is universal. It's a universal issue. It's misogyny and sexism. It's deeply entrenched in our society. It's been this way for centuries.
Since the beginning of time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Since the beginning of time, that has now been able to mushroom beyond anything because of those external, the world, as they say again in Adelaide.
Think about how globalized our world is and how connected we are, and how everyone has access to this extreme violent content. Everyone on the planet.
I mean, one of the reasons I kind of ask is I do sometimes worry that one of our particularly British problems is societally, in terms of the media, we keep these things in the taboo territory for as long as we can. It's untouchable, it's unspeakable, it's uncomfortable, and it's stiff upper lip and all this sort of stuff. And I do sometimes worry that makes us a sort of breeding ground for repression and
I think
all this
that's
kind of
just
stuff.
like,
but I think,
since the beginning of time, since the beginning of time.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. And please, if there's ever a chance I could come with you to one of these schools.
We'd love to have you. We'd really love that
so much. I really would. I am just such a believer in helping girls just realize what's going in that they don't know about. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Please follow at Everyone's Invited. Please support them if you can. Maybe make a little donation. They're doing really important work, and one of the reasons why it's so important, and if you support them, is we're sick of feeling powerless. We can do something, guys. We do have power. We do. So thank you again.
Thank you. I was trying to access the poll. I can't because I'm in StreamYard, but I will get Michelle. Maybe if someone here now could just have a look on the, because I can't get out of this to go to YouTube to look at the poll. If someone could tell me what the results of the poll are, what the numbers are, that would be great.
People are loving you having been here.
Yeah.
So how wonderful, articulate you are, and really thankful. Lots of thank yous. And we'll stay and read out a few of your questions before we go.
Oh, but thank you.
Thank you, and we'll stay in touch, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, honey. Wow, what an impressive young woman. Don't you just love that? They have spoken to 50,000 children. It's that ripple effect. You can affect change. It's like, what little stone can I just plop, and how can I just, like, even this conversation today.
It's just really moving. It's just really moving and humbling. Laura Lou says 51% somewhere. I don't know if you can still see. It's 51% have said yes in the poll. Which is, it's over half.
But it was, it was interesting because we were talking to the girls earlier, and as I said, this whole thing about kiss chase. Were you ever like in my school, it was like, the boys would run, you would be running and screaming, right? And they would pull your skirt up as fast as they can, so your knickers were completely shown, and you would feel humiliated and embarrassed, but there was no language around this. Be like, oh, boys, stop it. Oh, boys will be boys. But I mean, this happened every single playtime. Now, if somebody does something to you that you don't like and leaves you feeling uncomfortable, that is not right. That is because we tend to think that sexual assault, you know, has to be just something so like major and shocking. For me, it's when somebody does something to you or to your body that makes you feel so uncomfortable, embarrassed and ashamed. So
it's also putting me in mind, it's funny, on my list of things here, I had kiss chase. It's interesting when you look at these statistics, and thank you, someone there saying a disturbing result, Edward Bevington. If you think that the question is, have you, or does anyone
That's a really good point.
We've just said 51%,
we're desensitized.
51% of people on the poll on this live have said yes, they or someone they know has been abused at primary school by another student or child. That's a shocking statistic.
Oh, look, straight away. Carol, I forgot about those playground games, so I should change my vote.
Well, yes.
If you felt uncomfortable, somebody pull your skirt up over your head. One of our girls said, yeah, and it was like really bad when they just like push you up against the wall and then make you kiss them. I was like, that's what happened. Yeah, what did the teacher do? Oh, nothing.
And also, we have to push against
that to an adult.
And generations older than us, and people of our generation and younger than our age will say, and you often hear it, but you know, that's just what happened. If I hear ever sometimes, and it doesn't happen that often anymore, but you know, one of our kids will have had an experience somewhere on a bus or somewhere, and quite quickly an older, sometimes female, often female kind of person will say, yeah, but that was going on when we were young. Now, I know they're not saying that means it's all right.
No, because they're a victim of it.
No. But also in saying, but it's kind of like, that's what should be, or that's what happens, and that's what goes on. But it was you
that alerted that to me with the girls, because I had...
Kiss Jays.
No, early on when I was saying, oh, God, yeah, I know it all happened to us. And you said, I really don't like that. And I remember being really annoyed with you and thinking, yeah, you really don't like that because you don't realise that this is the way it happened. But you did make me think. I thought, no, I'm perpetuating that thing of saying, yeah, it happens to everyone. No, we have to say, do you know what? I can really imagine how you're feeling, because when that happened to me, actually, when I think about it, it was horrible. And I don't know why people just let that happen. And so I started changing the way that I responded to anything that they said like that. So maybe that's something you guys could think about. We mustn't just go...
Because indirectly, what that says to the person who's sharing their story, well...
Normalizing
we've all been through it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, it's normalizing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was normalized.
Yeah.
You know, it was normalized. It was normalized. We all got flashed at in the 70s and 80s. We all got flashed at. Everybody. I don't know a single woman that didn't say they got flashed at some point. So it became, you get flashed.
So keep the conversation going, guys. Keep your comments coming in. Keep sharing. The link to everyone's invited is directly to the website, is underneath this live. And also, there's also a list of other organizations, the NSPCC, etc., for anyone who feels adversely affected by this. Edward Bevington, my mum makes a joke of all the teachers, quote, touching the girls back in the day, 40s, 50s. What the actual fuck, Edward? Bloody hell, mate.
Thank you so much for joining in. Happy birthday, Pixie. Is it your birthday today? Happy birthday.
Oh, and
sorry,
it was also someone else's, Margaret's birthday earlier. I don't want to say Margaret if it's incorrect. Anyone we didn't get today, we'll sing you a happy birthday tomorrow. I just also want to say thank you again so much for being so welcoming to a guest, being so engaged, being so thought-provoking, sharing your thoughts, and having a really respectful chat in the comments throughout. That makes it such a meaningful experience for us, for our guest, and
empowering.
Yeah.
Just on this, girls used to chase boys around at discos and pounce on them. No adult stopped it. I just want us to all think about this, right? If you, as an adult, were in the park and a group of men chased you and pulled your skirt up over your head to show your knickers, or chased you, pushed you up against the wall and kissed you, how would society respond? And yet, why do we not respond in the same way to children? Because if it's normalized and okay for children in the playground, guess what? It becomes normalized and okay when you're out on the street and you're an adult. And I think that's what we have to think about.
Yeah.
I would now, if I saw a boy chasing a girl and forcing her to kiss it, I would say something.
Absolutely. absolutely.
We
Okay,
love you.
guys.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone, and we will see you later. A vlog will be landing